This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for December 28th, 2023. This is Season 13, Episode number 12. And this is Episode 397 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. I am your host, Bob Howard. Welcome, everybody, to the show. And we have a little bit of a different show this week. Some of the things will sound familiar, and I'll be doing some other things. And I'm excited to have everybody listening. I really appreciate the growth of the Power Play Post Show over the last, 6-7 months since I brought it back. I want to thank everybody for joining in, all the fathers of the players and the family of the players that have reached out to me and talked to me. And I really hope that people have enjoyed the interviews. I'm going to continue doing those interviews for you, the fans, for the players, and even for the families and everything. So the Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast and subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook, search for Power Play Post Show, and share any one of our show posts to all your friends. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And this week, there is no guest here on the show. It is going to be just me, so I do apologize for that. But the really cool thing is with the Christmas and the holiday being on Sunday and Monday, I just thought it would be a better idea to let the team get prepared for the 3 games and 3 nights coming up. First game is in Elmira, and then they go to Danbury, and then, of course, they are back at home on Sunday night, 5 p.m. for that New Year's Eve game. And this is a long-standing tradition that goes all the way back to the Dusty years, playing on New Year's Eve in Binghamton. I think happened a few times in the Dusters years. It didn't happen in the Iceman years, and I think we've only missed maybe one other year. So otherwise, Binghamton hockey on New Year's Eve is a tradition, been a long time tradition and everything. So no guest this week. We're going to talk about some different things, and we'll get started by looking back at the last 2 games versus the Watertown Wolves. Both wins, but I believe that these were wins that were done in 2 different ways on how the games were played. Friday night versus the Wolves was a 5-2 win. The goal scorers in that game for the Binghamton Black Bears was Austin Thompson, Gavin Yates, Andrew Lagar, Matthew Ballard, and Dakota Bond. Now, interesting enough here, Connor McAnanama got his 3rd straight start and win. So he played in the 2 games before and then played, obviously, in that game on Friday night. And he now has a 6-0-2 record with a 2.19 goals against average and a basically 93% save percentage, which going into Friday and then afterwards and then going into Saturday is one of the best records, or best. Basically, he's second in both categories for goals against average and save percentage, which is pretty good. Dan Weaver started the game but did not play long. He was absent in the second and the third periods. He did take a hit from behind and was injured in that game. Lions were Yates, Kirkby, and Thompson. Smith, Anderson, and Oliveri, Logar, Fletcher, and Samaro. Now, what's interesting about this is that, of course, Nikita Ivashkin was out, and then Thompson, I believe, was absent as well. Ray was the extra forward and moved up to help Anderson Oliveri line when Smith left the game due to sickness. It was actually Connor Smith that left the game due to sickness, not Thompson. So Ray had to move up. So he was the extra forward, and he just slotted up there. I like the way they can just do that on this team, and it works, and it doesn't seem to affect the team and its play. So that's a really good thing. Tyson Kirkby also helped out on other lines when needed. And I go back to my after-game report. This team seems to be able to unplug someone from one part and plug it into another part, and it works. They find a way. It's pretty good. The individual efforts of Gavin Yates, the game-tying goal, Andrew Logar's game-winning goal, and Matthew Billard's insurance goal, his first of the season, was pretty impressive. All three players, I thought, were just outstanding in those plays, in those goals that they scored, and just really took a game that I felt that the team looked like they were out of sorts. And, of course, that happens when you lose Ivashkin to start, right? I mean, he's suspended, so he's not in there. So that means you got to play with a line to put somebody in there, right? Then you have Smith kind of drop out because he's sick, which is understandable in some cases, especially the stuff that's been going around in the Binghamton area. If you ask anybody, they'll tell you there's been something going around. And then you have Weber, the defenseman, get injured, and he's out. So now you're down to 5 defensemen. You're down a couple players on forwards, and you're really kind of just trying to, keep up. And they still did. And individual efforts sometimes is what really helps take a team over. Now, of course, the team defense all season long, I talk about it, has just been so much better than previous seasons, and I think that's a big part of it. You can rely on that, right? So this was a tighter played game, and you would think, oh, okay, if we get players back for the next day, it's going to be better. But it doesn't get better, but it changes dramatically how the game was played the next day. I thought the team looked off, but that was in part because Weber was out, Smith left the game, and the Watertown put sticks on the pucks and played well. I do believe that Watertown played well in the Friday night game, but the Black Bears still won, moving on to the second game versus Watertown that weekend. So Saturday's game versus the Wolves was a 9-1 win. Now, what's crazy about this 9-1 win was half the team wasn't, I don't know, it's not half the team, it's only a couple players. This game saw the Black Bears draw 9 forwards. Oliveri, Kirkby, and Ray were on a line. Logar, Yates, and Smith were on a line. Fletcher Samaro and Connor McAnanama was on a line. Yes, Austin Thompson was out. He wasn't feeling good, so he did not play. Weber was out. He went on to the 15-day IR earlier in the game. Or was it the next day that they announced that? Either way, he's out. He's injured. So no Dan Weber, no Austin Thompson, no Nikita Ivashkin. They don't have a reserve, right? They're not calling up somebody from somewhere and getting them there sometime during that game. Connor McAnanama found out a few hours beforehand he was going to play forward, so he's got to do that. He goes out there with his 72 goalie uniform, right? So it just was one of those games where they were so shorthanded. Nobody, I tell you right now, nobody would be telling the truth if they said, oh, yeah, we're going to go out there and we're going to win this game 9-1. Nobody thought that. Nobody on the team, nobody in the stands, nobody in the media are going to go, oh, yeah, we knew that they were going to win 9-1. All 3 Binghamton goalies dressed in this scenario. Sam Levecchi was the starter. Nolan Egbert was the backup, and Connor McAnanama dressed as a forward. How unique is that? That's pretty cool, right? I think so, at least. That all 3 of your goaltenders were in the game or dressed. I could only imagine them sitting next to each other talking about this. Like, hey, look, we're going to be in this game and everything. So the Black Bears scored 9 goals. Connor Smith with 2. The first and the 9th goal. So he had the bookend goals. Kirkby with 2 goals. I believe he had a power play goal in one of them. Logar had a power play goal. Dan Stone had one of the most unique goals I've seen in a while. Jesse Anderson had a really cool goal. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Donald Oliveri and Justin Samaro, each with 1 goal. So if you count that out, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different players scored goals. on a team that didn't dress that many people. Right? So Sam Levici earned his 7th win of the season, saving 25 of 26 shots. He looked good. All the shots that came his way, he looked really good in net. He hadn't played in a while. Connor McAnanama had the last, 3 starts. So Sam was looking, I was worried he was going to look. First of all, you got a goalie who hasn't played in like 2 weeks. You've got less players. And yet you pull off a 9-1 win. It's just the special team. This is a special team. I hate to keep repeating it, but it's true. Dan Stone's goal was a header off his head or his helmet after Connor Smith took a shot that went off of Eloy Bouchard, and the strangest goal I've seen in a while, but that's what it was. It looked like a soccer play, a header. Jesse Anderson's goal, this was really beautiful. It was a face-off won by Gavin Yates right to Jesse Anderson, who then fired it above the shoulder of Owen Liskowitz, who was now in net because at one point they pulled Bouchard for Liskowitz. With the win, the Black Bears became their record is now 16-2-3. They're the first team to 50 points in the FPHL. And I'm sorry if you're doing power rankings, whoever you are. I know Gary has them at number 1 this year or this week. They're the number 1 team. I'm sorry. I get it. We don't play Columbus, right? So Columbus can't claim that they're better than Binghamton, and Binghamton can't really claim they're better than Columbus because they don't play each other at all. In Carolina and Binghamton, it's a wash, right? But I just think that Binghamton is winning in ways that other teams may not be at the moment, right? So interesting stuff. What can I say about this game? Team was short on players, and everyone who could play did, including a goalie as a forward. That is a team that will win many more games in the future. This is a special team. Folks, it really is. The Black Bears won their 4th game in a row, their 7th out of 8 games in December, and they also won their 3rd straight over the Wolves and in the 9-1 win on Saturday night in Binghamton. So pretty good weekend, right? The team is down. You got the, illness going through the locker room. You got players like Dan Weber, who I hope he gets back as soon as possible. It's an upper body injury. I hope he gets back as soon as possible. But yeah, that's the way it's going. So this upcoming weekend, it's a 3-3 games. 3 games in 3 nights. For Binghamton. 2 games are on the road, and 1 game is obviously in Binghamton on Sunday at 5 o'clock. Get your tickets. Get there. Come on. I mean, let's pack that house for the Black Bears. So Friday night in Elmira versus the River Sharks. Let's talk a little bit about the River Sharks. They are 6-11-0 on the season and have 16 points and are 5th in the Empire Division. Stephen Klink leads the team with 10 goals, 11 assists for 21 points. I believe all but maybe 1 goal and 2 assists are actually with another team, but the rest of that is with Elmira. We saw him play really well against the Binghamton Black Bears the last time we faced them. They have had a lot of movement across the team since the beginning of the season. They're one of those teams that just has not played well since the beginning. The Black Bears are 3-0-1 versus the River Sharks this season. Outscored them 24-14 in 4 games. Elmira is only 72% good on the PK, while Binghamton is an 86% good on the PK, one of the best in the FPHL. And Binghamton is 28% on the power play versus Elmira, who's only 24% good on the power play. Now, Saturday and Sunday night is a home-and-home series against the Danbury Hat Tricks. The Hat Tricks are 10-9-2 with 29 points, and they are 3rd in the Empire Division. Johnny Ruiz leads the Hat Tricks with 10 goals, 13 assists for 23 points. Connor McCollum is 9-6 with a 2.94 goals against average and has a 92% save percentage for them. Don't know if we'll face him, but my guess is we'll see him at least in one of the games for sure. The Black Bears are 6-0-1 and have won the last 6 games against the Hat Tricks. Now, I can tell you right right now, and most fans know this too, we have not been this good against Danbury. Now, there are circumstances with Danbury. They lost a ton of players. Half of the defense, maybe even more than half of their defense, was called up or retired or left. Few of the good guys on playing are not there. Even Daniel Amesbury, who is, a guy that a lot of people talk about in a lot of different ways. The guy can still do certain things. I mean, he scored one of the games against us this year. He scored 2 goals. So, I mean, you can't take away some of that skill sometimes and everything. The Black Bears will be in Danbury on Saturday night and then host New Year's Eve at 5 p.m. on Sunday. I've already said that multiple times already in this episode. Binghamton teams all-time on New Year's Eve are 28-16-2. The first home game on New Year's Eve was in 1975, a loss to the Mohawk Valley Comets, 3-5. Black Bears are 1-1 on New Year's Eve. I think they played Danbury one year and they played Watertown last year. And now they're back to playing Danbury again this year. Okay, so all that right there is the stuff that's very interesting about Danbury. Now, again, we're playing against a Danbury team that's not the same, but we still need to beat them. We need to get wins. We got 9 points on the line this upcoming weekend, and I think it'd be a disappointment if we come away with 6 points or less. And that's because this is one of the best teams in the league. And Elmira, we can't snooze on them just because we got Danbury after that. Elmira, one of the things I will say about the league this year, there's a little bit more parity. Yes, there's some haves and there's some have-nots. That's fair. You can anybody who says that, without a doubt, you can certainly make that statement. But here's what I want to say, is that we don't have the 1 in 25 teams this year. We don't have the teams that are only going to win 2 games or 3 games. We've got teams that have won 5, 6, 7 games at the bottom of the divisions. So we can't snooze on Elmira, and we got to really keep putting it to the screws on Danbury and really beat the record that basically Tyson Kirkby said, hey, our captain said 12-6. Well, guess what? I think we can do better than 12-6. I think Gary Ryan mentioned on the show already that maybe Binghamton can do better than 12-6 against Danbury this year. We'll see. We got another half of the season to go, so it'll be very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the news, the roster moves and transactions before we take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about the return of the Power Play Post Show and whatnot. Roster moves and transactions. Let's see here. So on the 23rd, Thomas Ray was re-signed to a 4-game PTO. So he's obviously going to be sticking around. I think he's a player that Coach Sherwood is going to find a way to make sure that he is on this team going forward. Dan Weber was put onto the 15-day IR. I have talked to Coach. He is looking. We all know that Jake Schultz is been let go from the Worcester team up in the ECHL. He has not reported to the Black Bears on the 26th. So yesterday, from when I'm recording this to on the 27th, he has failed to report. There is no new information yet about what is happening with Jake Schultz. Nikita Ivashkin returns from suspension. So, do we have a roster spot available? Yeah, we kind of do, because you have 3 goaltenders and you can let one of them go and bring on an extra forward or an extra defenseman, being that Dan Weber is off. And I know Coach is looking. There is some opportunity out there, possibly. Maybe we'll know more Thursday or going into Friday. Okay, we'll see what the team decides to do. They might try to ride through this over the next couple weeks as well. We'll see what happens, because they do have opportunities. All right, so we're going to take a short break, and when we come back here on the Power Play Post Show, we're going to talk about the 2023 Black Bears, and we're going to talk about the return of the Power Play Post Show and my thoughts on that and whatnot. So we'll take a short break. We'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. So the voice that you just heard was the voice of Rob Lepolis. He is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Adirondack Thunder in the ECHL. So one of the really cool things about Rob is that he was an intern for the Binghamton Senators, and he worked with Grady Wittenberg, and I got to know him. And when he left the Senators and started his professional career, he and I stayed in touch. And one of the really cool things was he started doing these MC kind of commercials and things for the Power Play Post Show. Great experience for him, and it gives me a more professional sound. And one of the great things is when we started off coming back in 2023, back in March, and the season was almost over with, he still was, very receptive of doing stuff for this upcoming season. For season 12, I kind of mixed together all the older stuff that we had going from before and kind of put together a show intro and extra and stuff like that. But in the off season, Rob was really cool about just recording some new stuff for us here on the Power Play Post Show. So it's really great. Just very happy to have Rob be on board and whatnot, which is very cool. I also want to give a special shout out to Brooks Hill. Okay, really want to thank Brooks Hill for all of his hard work and how much he's helped the Power Play Post Show. Really, starting at the end of last season, at the end there in March and April, just the communication between him and I, and him helping getting the players lined up and set up for some of the interviews that I've done. I couldn't do it without him. And I think the support that I've gotten from Brant Sherwood, the coach, he and a lot of the people with the Black Bears listen to the show. So a big thank you for that. I know a lot of the family members listen to the show, and it's just been really great. So what's the purpose of this show? The purpose of this show is for me to just really continue the conversation of Binghamton hockey. I've been really working on the project of binghamtonhockey.net for a long time. Since about 2003 is when I really started the idea of having one website that you could go to for Binghamton hockey information. And I really do think that has come along really well, right? We have a good website that you can go to get Binghamton hockey information and just archived information as well. Like every time they put out a press release, we now take that press release and put that in with the Black Bears information. So when you go to a box score that I create for the games, there's a link at the top with that box score. It's hard work, but it's now archived. If the Black Bears ever go away, you'll be able to see that. And you can actually go through some of our Senators coverage of the playoffs and see some of the press releases that were written up by Kate Krenzer and some of the other PR directors that worked for the Binghamton Senators, and you'll see some of those press releases. I actually have a ton of the BC Iceman stuff to go through to try to build and put towards the BC Iceman information, because this is all stuff that they released as press releases and whatnot. So binghamtonhockey.net is just a great tool for everybody to go and look at. I've heard from people who work on the team that they love the fact that when they come to Binghamton to work with the team, that there is something like this around. And you could just go to the website, click on teams, or hover over the teams thing, and you could see stuff from the Black Bears, the Devils, the Senators, the Icemen, Rangers, Whalers, and Dusters, which is pretty cool. So I'm really excited that is really starting to kind of take shape the way I wanted it to. And so I hope everybody, if you've not had a chance to go to binghamtonhockey.net, do so. We don't collect any of your personal information. We see what pages you might go to, but that's it. We don't care about anything else. We just want to provide information to people. Which is really nice. But 2023. So what made me come back and to start up the Power Play Post Show again? It really comes down to I missed it. In 2015, I had recorded my last episode. Bobby Robbins, who was a former Binghamton Senator, Providence Bruin, played with a few different teams. We did an interview, and I was overworked at my job that I'm at today, but things are a lot better today than it was because I was just starting that job, and I just was overwhelmed. I had a lot on my plate, and it was very difficult to put 20 to 30 hours a week, including a 40-hour job, together with that. And so every time I thought, I was like, it's time to bring it back. It's time to bring back the Power Play Post Show. Things kind of got a little crazy, and I just never could bring it back. But this year was a great year to bring it back, and I did it in a way where I'm not overdoing it. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I did a lot of great interviews. I talked to a lot of broadcasters, a lot of players, a lot of media people, coaches, tons of them, interviewed them, told their story. And that's the whole point of the Power Play Post Show, is to tell their story as best as I can, the way I like to tell the story. And it just never was able. But now I can do it in a way where I am telling the story and I'm keeping it concise and, to like an hour and 15 minutes for the show. This week's show will be a little bit less and everything because there's a little bit less that we're going to be talking about. And this was just the right time. I missed it so much. I missed doing this. I missed that connection. I missed telling the story. I missed talking about and covering, Binghamton hockey or the AHL. And right now we have the FPHL in Binghamton, and that's absolutely okay. So the important thing here is that it was the right time. It was the right time to come back and do this. And I'm really happy that I did. 2023 has been great, right? I honestly have to say that coming into this 13th season, we did the 12th season last year, or the beginning of 2023, and then we started up the 13th season in October. But coming back was really great because I was able to get my feet wet. I talked to a few people that had already been on the show before, which was kind of nice. Jimmy Bono came back on the show. He's a scout for the Sharks organization, so it was great to talk to him. I got to talk to Phil Gibaleo, who's been on the show more times than anybody in the history of the Power Play Post Show. Phil Gibaleo, this was just after Quinnipiac won the national championship in for the Frozen Four, and he's the broadcaster now. He used to be the broadcaster of the Bridgeport Sound Tigers, and now he's their radio play-by-play broadcaster for them, which is so cool. And in the Connecticut Whale as well, in the what would have been the NHL. So great bringing him on, bringing Gino D'Angelo, a Binghamton native, on the show. He was my first guest. So very cool to have him on. Then Rob Polis came on. First time I got to interview him, but I've known him and talked to him for so long, so it was great. Then we brought on the captain, Tyson Kirkby. That was the real Brooks helped me with Gino, got me in touch with Gino, and that was the week that he got traded. So if you remember, the week that he got traded or released from, he asked for his release, and he went and signed with Elmira. When I talked to him, he was in Elmira Mammoth at the time, and but it was Brooks that got me his phone number, told me to call him, told me to reach out to him and everything. So thank you, Brooks, for that. That was very cool. And I love talking to Gino. You know, his family, police officers in the area. I know his aunt, and so good people. But then Tyson Kirkby came on. Now the captain of the Binghamton Black Bears, back then, just a player. We got Brant Sherwood on, and then both were on multiple times so far. I've gotten to tell Brooks' story, which is very cool. JT Walters, Gary Ryan, who does the Fed League Flash, Brendan Stanko, who's now up in the SPHL. And shout out to all of his family members that joined the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Jesse Anderson, who I thought that was such a great interview. Again, Austin Thompson, another great interview. And the one thing that fans, I hope you will buy into and really enjoy is when I do reach out to other teams in the FPHL and get an interview with them. And I did that with Brendan Riley of the Thunderbirds. I did that in the summertime with Tom Callahan from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Or Columbus, I did it again, with the Columbus River Dragons. So I had those guys both on the show, and they're great broadcasters. These are great broadcasters. And I'm hoping to have Jeff Barrett from the Watertown Wolves on. I would really love to get him on. He's got, he's been broadcasting for a while, and he's a very energetic guy. Andrew Logar was on the show, and obviously last week was Connor McAnanama. And I just really love telling the stories of these players. This has been a great year, and I think everybody who's listened to this show, whether you're family of somebody that I interviewed or just a friend or whatever it might be, thank you for listening and continue to grow this show, grow it. I think one of the things that I would really like to do, and I'm going to be perfectly honest here, I'd like to get a co-host again. I'm not sure how I want to do it. But I definitely want to bring in another voice and have them on a regular basis and everything to be a co-host on the show. So we're going to work on that. We're going to, put the feelers out. I'm going to continue to talk to people to see who's the right choice for something like that. But I think it would be very cool to be able to bounce some of this information back and forth with somebody, give you a different perspective. I've done that before. The previous incarnation of the show, I had Jason Wilcox, who's from the Binghamton area. He was on the show for 9 years, and then Megan Reef, who was on the show for 2 years. She was phenomenal. She was from Bridgeport. Actually, she's from New Rochelle, New York, but went to Bridgeport Sound Tiger games on a regular basis. So, and had a different perspective on hockey than I did, which was cool. So, I just glad to be back. I'm glad that the Black Bears are doing so well. And I've got a lot of plans of some things that I'm going to bring up and talk about in 2024. One of the things is going to be the attendance and how the attendance has kind of grown, and maybe this year some challenges with the attendance, but we'll talk about that and everything. I think the Black Bears are still going to be 500-600 average over the first year. But there's some challenges compared to last year when it comes to the scheduling, maybe. So it's been a great 2023. Happy New Year to everybody when we get there in just a few days. Hopefully the Black Bears do well. Now, I did kind of preview and say that I was going to rate the offense, the defense, the goalies, and the coaching for the Black Bears, and I'm still going to do that. And I left it to the end because some of you guys don't make it to the end, and maybe that's a good thing here, right? But let's talk a little bit about let's rate the offense, the defense, the goalies, and the coaching. And I'm going to just use that simple, basic scale that colleges uses, like A minus, A plus, that type of thing, right? So let's talk about the offense. One of the best offenses in the league, 98 goals at this standpoint for the Binghamton Black Bears. I think, if I remember correctly, when I looked at a basic, just about every single person on this team has actually scored a goal for the Binghamton Black Bears. And how crazy is that, right? To think about that, at least almost every single person on this team, when you go up and down the roster right now, if I just look at the roster the way it is, I know Stanko's up, Dan Weber's out, but Dan Weber's also scored a goal. Obviously, Stanko had scored 12 goals. Mac Lewis is probably the only one with significant gameplay because he played 8 games who doesn't have a goal scored, right? So, but you have Connor Smith with 11, Tyson Kirkby with 12. You have Nikita Ivashkin with 11. You have Gavin Yates with 7, Austin Thompson with 7, Donald Oliveri, who's only played 7 games, he's got 7 goals, right? You got a few more guys with 5 goals like Andrew Logar, Thomas Ray, and Josh Fletcher. Some of these guys haven't played 21 games. You know, someone like Austin Thompson, he's played all 21 games. Jesse Anderson's played all 21 games. Dean Stone has played all 21 games. He's scored 2 goals on the defense with 6 assists, right? Offensively, I'm giving these guys an A. I don't think they could do any better offensively than what they have. I mean, this team has only lost 2 games in regulation, right? Maybe they could shoot a little bit better, right? But if they score another 98 goals in the last half of this season, right, and that's close to almost 200 goals, fine. I'm fine with that. I give them an A. I think they're doing very, very well, right? So let's talk about defense. Now, you've heard me say multiple times that this team has played better defense than we've seen in the first 2 years. And I think it's a team defense. I think there's a mindset with this team, as I've talked to them, as I've brought it up, that we have seen that maybe hasn't happened in the previous 2 years. So how do I rate the defense here? Do I just look at the defensemen and everything? Well, if you just look at the defensemen on this team, you've got Jesse Anderson, who's played defense and offense. You got Dakota Bond, who's got 4 goals, I think all within the last 5 or 6 games, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong by that, but it's pretty darn close. You've got Donald Oliveri, who's listed as defense, but he's played a lot of forward. You've got Matthew Ballard, right? You've got Dan Stone. You've got Dan Weber, who are both who Weber is injured right now, right? And if you look at their plus minus, right, everybody on this team is looking good plus minus except for Austin Thompson. And I don't think that has anything to do with Austin Thompson at all. He's a forward, but for some reason, when he's out there, maybe a couple more goals are getting pushed through. Justin Samaro, you know, that's that third line mindset. Even though Andrew Logar, he's a +4, but almost every single person on this team is got a plus minus over 0, right? Except for 2 players. The goaltenders' goals against averages are so much lower. Save percentages are higher, right? So that really comes down to a team defense. I'm giving them an A-. Why? Because I think all teams can do a little bit better defensively. Defense in the FPHL is the hardest thing. I think the mindset coming in is if I score goals, it looks good, it's going to get me to move up a little bit more, right? No one is going to look at Andrew Logar and go, oh my God, he's a +4. He's on the third line and he's still got 12 points, 5 goals and 7 assists, right? But he does that dirty work. He does the hard work. He does some of the work that no one else does. He got kicked out of a game because he was looking for a fight because he knows he has to have that part of his thing. So I give and this could improve throughout the year. If this stays the course like it is and we continue to have some games, and I'm going to pull up the games here. Let me just pull up the scores, right? Because let's talk about this for a second because this really does play an effect. They gave up 1 goal to Watertown. Then they gave up 2 goals to Watertown 2 games ago. Then they gave up 0 goals to Watertown, right? So in the last 3 games, this team has given up 3 goals. That's it. That's pretty good. I know Watertown's not the best team in the world, but it's still something to talk about because before that, Danbury, they gave up 2 goals, okay? They had the one bad game in Carolina, but then the night before, they only gave up 1 goal to Carolina, right? Before that, 4 goals to Elmira, then 2 goals to Danbury. Okay, so as you can see, the progression here has been that they give up 1 goal, 2 goal, and those goals against averages down. That's a team defense mentality and good goaltending, right? So I give an A- to the defense. I think it could get better. And as long as it stays the course like this, that's probably going to improve to an A. But it's true. That's how good they've been so far. Is it's an A-, because the other 2 years here in Binghamton, we're talking like B-, C pluses. That's it. I mean, we're not even in the realm of A's. That's how special this team is, and I just really hope people get it. Understand that. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the goalies, right? And that kind of plays into obviously the defensemen, right? Because they play in front of them a lot of times. But let's talk about these 3 goalies. These 3 goalies are awesome. Connor McAnanama, right? Leading the team right now with a 2.19 goals against average and a 925 save percentage, right? So 93% save percentage, which is awesome. Sam Levici, 91% save percentage, almost 92%. He's a 914 with a 2.193 goals against average. This team has 2 players who have played a significant amount of games. 8 for Connor McAnanama. I believe Sam Levici and Nolan Egbert shared a couple, swap in, swap out type of things. He's played in 9 games as well, right? And that's a significant amount of your 21 games. And they're both under 3 for their goals against average. And their save percentage, which is the thing that people really look at when it comes to goalies. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is an A squad. This is an A rating for these guys. Nolan Egbert is at 87% save percentage and a 3.72. He's been in a couple of tougher games. He's only played in, I think, 6 games for the Black Bears, and he's at a 3.72 goals against average. That could get better, okay? But I believe overall when you look at these 3 goalies, I give them an A. I really do. And I think that's important. So now let's look at coaching. As most people know, I communicate with Brant Sherwood. I like getting information from him. I don't always share everything that he tells me with everybody else because I can't. That's the trust that I have with him. It allows me to form opinions about the team because I'm getting information that I am to believe is pretty accurate. It's hard to rate just one person. I've never talked to Tom Reynolds. I don't know necessarily what his involvement is necessarily with the team always. And I'm sure he's probably getting the defensive pairs out there during the games. Tyson Kirkby I've talked to, JT Walters I've talked to. I know the mindset of those guys, so that's a leadership group. Those are also coaches. So when I look at coaching, here's the thing I'm going to do. I think with the coaching, and I look at what Brant Sherwood has done, and I did have a conversation with him about going to Danbury when he was suspended and everything. And I said, I wouldn't have gone. And he said, well, I went to protect my players. I went there because I wasn't going to let my players go there by themselves. And I appreciate that. I do. And so what I'm going to say is because of the penalties that this team has racked up, right? And they're one of the highest penalized teams in the league, right? And they have 603 penalties minutes. That's more than every team in the league. Now, part of that might be retaliatory, right? Someone does something to you, you do something back, you get caught, you get to 10 minutes because you're mouthing off. That's the one part of this team that has not been fixed yet. And I don't know if that needs to be fixed, but I think that comes from, coaching and everything. I'm giving the coaching staff an A-. And the reason why, and that's the only negative I have, is the kind of the outburst that sometimes the team has, even the coaching staff. I mean, Coach Sherwood has been fined twice and everything. And no, he does not need a GoFundMe account made up for him for his fines. And he probably will get another one by the end of the year for saying something, but it depends on how these games go. It depends on the officiating and so on and so forth, right? But it's the only negative I can come up with. I think he's done a great job working with these players when it comes to putting the lines together, keeping the lines together, plugging people in and out that he knows will work with the other players, right? You don't just put Thomas Ray up on the line that he did this past weekend without knowing that Thomas Ray is going to be able to handle skating with those guys, right? Thomas Ray is the smallest player on the ice, probably super fast. All that is great, but he knows that Thomas Ray can go up there and work with them and have results. So that's very important. He's also brought in some great players, right? So I think A- is good. There's some room for improvement when it comes to, the penalties and the outbursts and the fines and things of that nature. But overall, when you're looking at a team and you're giving them A- and A's throughout across the board, defensive, offensively, goaltending wise, it's a pretty good rating. This is a pretty good scorecard for the Black Bears halfway through their season. I think we'll see some other really great things. So that's pretty much it. I'm not gonna go into any other things when it comes to how is the organization doing and handling fans and stuff like that. I think that Andreas has always done a really great job. And he's such a super nice guy and so approachable, right? I think if you're a fan, you go up to Andreas and just say hello and you treat him like a normal human being, which is so important when it comes to these guys. I think if you do that, if you just treat these guys like human beings, they really appreciate that. I also want to throw out another shout out to Brooks. Hopefully you're feeling better. Hopefully you're back this weekend. Alex Jones did a good job filling in for you this past weekend, but a lot of fans missed their broadcaster and everything. So hopefully he's feeling better. He did mention on the Binghamton Black Bears fan page that he was under the weather enough that he went to the hospital. So, Brooksy, just feel better. You got 3 really big games coming up between obviously the I-86 rivals of the Elmira River Sharks and, of course, the home-and-home series with the Danbury Hat-Tricks. And one is a big game, obviously, on New Year's Eve. I hope everybody enjoys that game on New Year's Eve on Sunday at 5 o'clock. Hopefully the ticket sales pick up and everybody gets out there and has a good time. And thank you for listening in 2023. Our next show will be in the first week of January, which will be just next week. On the 4th, January 4th, will be our next one back. And we will more than likely be talking, and I'm hoping, I still got to reach out and make sure that Brant's okay with us. We're looking to start off the new year with Coach Sherwood on the show. And then next week, folks, I'm going to put out a poll. I'm going to pick 3 guys I haven't talked to yet. You're going to vote and tell me who I'm going to interview next. So next week, you'll see a poll out there on the Facebook page, our Facebook group for the Power Play Post Show. It'll have 3 players that I have not interviewed yet, and you're going to tell me who will be the first person that I will interview in 2024 from the Binghamton Black Bears. So I'm really excited about doing that. Hopefully Coach will be on board for next week. And I think that'll be great. 3 games, 3 nights this weekend. I think there's 4 this season, 4 of those this season, 3 games and 3 nights. So it's important to at least get 6 points or more. Let's hope that they do. But thank you very much for listening to me ramble on about everything. And thank you for listening this year during the 2023 and now the 2022, 2023 season, and now the 2023 and 24 season. I really appreciate it. So have a happy new year. Please be safe out there. And we'll talk to you next time right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.